Oh. I don't want this recipe. It's dangerous. Hey, Lily, is there wireless here?
Yeah.
It sure is.
I don't know how much of it is there. No, it should be open for a sailboat.
Oh, Carl.
Well, welcome everybody. And we have the A-team here today. I can see.
For those in LA, maybe you can can the camera for the food. Give them an idea.
We'll let them dream.
I can only keep the pretense up for just a short while that ours was better. I can't anymore.
They are getting better. I know Peter told me.
Well, it's Northern California though. Hello.
I mean, Leif has imaginary dinners, so I mean,
He's having one right
imaginary potlucks, right?
now. The imaginary pot.
Oh, hey, there it is, far out.
Just checking up on you.
Huh?
Checking up on you.
Yeah, I better turn this down.
You could take that over and show him the imaginary potluck can.
How do you do that?
This is, I know.
We'll have to have one more.
Is that high enough for you, Peter?
Yeah, it's great.
For some reason, it's not showing that it's muted.
I spread myself out there. Sorry.
Is this the mute? Can you, this muted too? No. I don't know what that is. Oh,
What space? Oh, yeah. One cushion for each, you know,
Yeah, I'm gonna want to cross my legs too, so.
on an airplane.
Yeah.
Something like this.
Oh, is this good on the back here? Is that good on the back?
This Satchidananda, which is not nothing. The body or the permutation of a field of stuff and experience appears, as we've mentioned before, in it. It's not that consciousness or Satchidananda is an extrusion or a symptom of being born. Right? The world appears in it. But I have no memory of it, of the nature of experiencing prior to some vague point in my childhood or infancy. So what was it prior then to what appeared to be the birth or the genesis of my memory? Which is a funny way of saying what's going to happen when I die.
The same thing that's happening now, it'll just look different.
But looking different is very fun, it's vague, it's kind of magical. Because looking different still suggests, you know, the subtle continuity or perturbation of experiencing regardless of how subtle it may be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe it's foolish to ask you because you appear to be still alive. But maybe there's a discovery to be made that speaks to the strangeness of Satchidananda
No, get towel.
not being nothing. Memory is a symptom of it. It's not dependent upon memory. And yet, prior to my earliest recollection of having memory, I didn't know anything was going on.
Well, you don't remember that you knew anything was going on.
Okay, sure.
It may not have had sufficient continuity that you can reconstitute it in terms of your present frame of reference.
Right.
Or any present frame of reference that has sufficient structure to interpret as being anything
Yes.
in the sense that a memory does. I mean,
Right.
yesterday's easily recallable because there's certain parameters about eating and being and doing activities
Yeah.
that can be related to in terms of the present context of describability or conceivability.
The sense hallucination is fresher, so
Sure.
it seems.
But can you remember what you experienced last night right after you went to sleep before you started dreaming, for example?
Yeah, not well.
Yeah.
I could imagine something, but
Yeah.
not well.
Because again, the frame of reference of that quality of experience
Yeah.
doesn't compute in terms of the sort of the referentiality that we hold memory in.
Yes.
I mean, memory is very relational.
Yep.
It's relational in terms of various arbitrary parameters, which again, of course, as you say, are supplied by the Satchidananda itself.
Yeah.
So Satchidananda is doing memory, Satchidananda is doing raw experience, Satchidananda is doing the referentiality to the degree there is any,
Yep.
and Satchidananda is also doing the non-referentiality.
Sure.
And there's an enormous amount of non-referentiality that sneaks under the radar, Trojan horse with referentiality.
Yep.
There's a lot of, you might say, sort of subtle spiritual aspects of phenomena, or multidimensional aspects of phenomena that are not rememberable.
No.
So you can remember an event. Say you had an event yesterday that had just for the sake of argument, that had a high, tingle component,
There were a few, yeah.
a high, radiant transcendental light
Sure.
component. You can remember the event, and you can remember maybe that it had that, but you can't really recreate that because again, that is intrinsically non-referential.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying you can, I'm asserting you can't. I'm assuming you can't.
Yeah.
Because I think again that memory is what we think of as memory is largely related to referentiality, and the vast majority of our experience is doesn't lend itself to referentiality because it's too slippery. It's too.
Right.
I could use the word abstract, but that's not the right word at all. It's too non-referential.
Yep.
It doesn't compute in any terms that can be referred to. It's inconceivable, and it's hard to recall inconceivability. You can maybe recall the fact of inconceivability. That I was having an experience such and such a time that really
put a
amazing.
Sticky note on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Called inconceivable.
And I think that very much like deep sleep, or very much like sort of even transcendental aspects of more normal experience, it exists outside of referential parameters, and hence is intrinsically real time. It doesn't make sense except in terms of the event itself, which is ultimately true of all event, because all event is, even memory is a bit of a sham. We cook up memory and say, "Oh, I remember this," and it sort of makes sense because I remember that, and now this is happening, and there's some degree of correlation.
Yeah.
But what's happening here is completely inconceivable. Even the normalcy and the referentiality of it is completely inconceivable in actuality. So memory kind of bootstraps itself into a kind of a logic, let's say.
It nudges its way into a field of attention.
Yeah, and has a sort of a pseudo consistency or a claim to normalcy, or
Right.
it's sort of hard to pin it down.
Sure.
But the fact is that normal experience is exactly as inconceivable as non-referential experience.
Yep.
And the very fact of normalcy, the very fact of referentiality is itself inconceivable.
So
Because
that-
again, it's a direct radiance of Satchidananda in Satchidananda, never departing from Satchidananda.
Yeah.
So the only actual event is Satchidananda. And the fact that it can look like this sitting around this room chatting is inconceivable.
Yes.
In fact.
Yeah, in fact, right. So the notion of waking consciousness, dreaming consciousness, and deep sleep are all remarkably simultaneously present.
Yeah, and they bootstrap themselves up into a kind of a difference and a kind of a, you know, seeming structure or seeming coherence,
Yeah.
which is literally bootstrapped. It's made up as it goes along, and it seems to be self-verifying as it goes along, based on nothing.
Yes.
But based on because it can.
Yeah. Like a dog.
Yeah.
So the subtlety of the deathless is just as deliciously present as
Yeah.
what appears to be the continuity of a born life.
Yeah, because this event, you know, the real point is, I mean, all these sorts of questions, you know, what's after death, what happens when we sleep, what are dreams like, all these questions
Yeah.
can be addressed by simply discovering exactly what's happening right here, right now.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same event, with no shade of difference whatsoever.
Right.
You know, and the fact that it can look as arguably normal or embodied or you know, having continuity and so on, as it does, is just evidence of its inconceivable functionality. It can just churn this shit out without batting an eyelash. But there's nothing here.
Not a thing.
All of this
Why is it your job?
seems to be the way it seems to be, as an artifact of what the radiance is. The radiance can seem to be this. The radiance can seem to be what happens in deep sleep. The radiance can seem to be what happens in dreams. The radiance can seem to be God knows what else.
Yeah.
Anything. Who knows?
Right.
But it never departs from the event. There's no quantitative or qualitative difference in the event ever. Now it's always the same thing's happening now, always, exactly, eternally. I mean, beyond space and time. But this is beyond space and time.
Sure.
It seems to be spatial and temporal,
Right.
but that's part of its showing off again.
So if we conjure a notion of before memory or after so-called death of the physical body, that's invariably from the vantage point of a fraction of conceivability, not from the entirety of inconceivability, where the question doesn't really have any relevance.
Yeah, and it's basically sitting on nothing, because conceivability is itself, you know, farted into existence out of nothing.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not like there is conceivability and the inconceivable somehow transcends it. Conceivability itself is inconceivable.
Yeah, that's right.
And that it can masquerade as conceivability and
It
continuity.
can only
and,
masquerade as.
yeah, I mean, that it looks like that and is interpretable as that is astounding.
Yes.
I mean, you know, the power of the Shakti, the power of this radiance is inconceivable. It's literal. I mean, it's beyond inconceivable. It's just, but here it is.
Right. To infinity and beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's macrocosmic or microcosmic. Either, yeah.
Because again, all of that is just more splitting hairs of the radiance. You know, you want to see something seemingly microcosmic, the radiance will churn it up in a
Yeah,
second.
you want it, you got it.
You know, you want
Yeah.
macrocosmic, bang.
Right. Go to the
You
neutrino
want-
and then drop through
You
again.
want space, time, and embodiment, you got it.
Got it.
You know, you want disembodied after death, you know,
On
non-existent light shows, you got it.
Yep. Yeah, you want to rub your nose against the edge of the known universe in an instant, and then look from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
But you know, but
And that's not appearing spatially. It's not like we start on Earth, go to the edge of the Milky Way, and then keep going out beyond till you finally hit the edge of the edge of the redshift. It's this.
this is what hyperspace looks like.
Yeah, it's
And
bizarre.
hyperspace can look like this, and that's intrinsic in its nature that it
Yeah.
can do so.
Yeah, great.
And the important point, you know, from a yogic point of view, is this is accessible, it's knowable, it's available, it's right here, right now, and it's actually blatantly obvious. It's not even very
not well
artfully.
hidden.
It's not well hidden.
No.
You know? If you actually look at
It's a really shitty job of peekaboo is what it is.
yeah, if you actually look at what experience is made of and how it works, it's just completely inconceivable.
Yeah.
You know, every aspect of it. You know, time.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Disguises
change,
itself.
consciousness. I mean, all these things. What are they? You know, it's like, oh, it's just time. You know, sure it's time. It's now. You know,
It's a disguise.
it's going to be one soon. It's like,
Exactly.
and yet again, this stuff just bootstraps itself into all of this astounding degree of apparent coherence effortlessly,
Yeah.
just like, you know, flicking a pinky. It's showing off. You know.
Yeah.
Well, then I see that there's kind of a settling in to the reality of what it is, and kind of a stretching out of feeling sense that is different than normal consciousness, and just allowing a little bit more comfort, a tiny degree of greater comfort to be with what is,
Sure.
and then to drop into that, you know, for a short time and then go back out. But just kind of ratcheting into that and not being able to control it.
Sure. Because there's no, the control itself is a fantasy, is a notion. What is happening here and the way it happens and what is doing it and all that, to the extent those are even meaningful issues, is inconceivable. So the notion that there should or could be control or not is all basically, you know, manufactured into existence. It's oversimplified.
But somehow I'm being allowed or being evolved into getting to different levels.
Yeah, lucky you.
You're not complaining, are you?
No.
Okay, just sounded a little crabby.
Does it seem like I'm really? I'm dumbfoundedly exclaiming.
Good, good, good.
Yeah.
That's
Groovy.
that.
But that's what this is. You know, this is all, you know, the very essence of what this is all about is the intrinsic process of reality itself. In other words, reality is already doing itself comprehensively. It's already a done deal. This is reality doing itself. And, you know, the inherent yoga is tuning into that fact and letting reality do itself and appreciating that reality is doing itself comprehensively, which includes the phenomena we call, or may call, spiritual unfoldment. And it seems that when you tune into that fact more and more profoundly, as it is, the actual you know, symptoms of unfoldment also seem to accelerate. And exactly what the correlation is, who knows? But at any rate, it's empirically observable that it seems to be so.
So you use the word the symptoms of unfoldment.
Well, unfoldment itself is inconceivable. So we can only talk about the symptoms where we get this, you know, expanded vision and sense of, you know, blah, 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 blah. I mean, however you want to define it or notice it in your own experience. But what it is, who knows? You know, we notice the symptoms, the portions of it we can get some degree of a handle on, or even refer to. But the entire thing is, you know, this event here is inconceivable in every aspect, and what it's doing and the way it's doing it and all of that is just completely inconceivable. And all of this yoga, this spirituality, this tuning into it, noticing it, becoming it, or seeing that you are it, and then reaping the rewards thereof, so to speak, is all just this event itself. It's all intrinsically being done. Those are just different ways of looking at it or spin doctoring it. But nonetheless, strangely, it seems that a kind of an active participation in this noticing has profundity. It has, it has some kind of teeth.
I've known for so many years that you just know that you can stretch out with your feelings.
Yeah, sure.
And you can stretch out your feelings in any one of a number of different ways.
Sure.
And then, but, to kind of turn that off and have that kind of ignored or shut down or whatever, and then to kind of reintegrate it little by little, and to see different dimensions just for a little bit. You kind of want to go, yeah, this is kind of cool. Let's do this some more.
Yeah. Sure, yeah, works for me. Yeah, by all means. I mean, when you begin to discover how astounding this event / process is, obviously it's exciting, it's enlivening, it's stimulating, it's rewarding, it's et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's, seductive, it's empowering, it's brings joy, brings liberation, brings greater sense of fullness and completeness and intelligence and blah 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 blah. So sure, of course, it's a no-brainer that when you begin to tune into this stuff, it's sign me up. But the it's not about anything you do. It's really about noticing what this is intrinsically, which is it itself, because it itself is the noticing, because this event is basically a noticing. In other words, you could say this is noticing itself, and that's what is happening here. And so when you notice this on any degree of profundity, you are essentially in its prime mode of it noticing itself, and that seems to resonate, and the magic happens. But it's not anything you're doing or changing so much as noticing the intrinsic event or process that is already occurring, that this intrinsically is, that this inherently is.
I find at times that it's almost as though everyone is participating, whether intentionally or not, in bringing me to see reality as it is. And I'm doing the same at the same time.
Sure.
So, it's very strange.
Very, very strange. I'll see you very and raise you very.
I fold.
Man.
He's in debt.
Are these people challenging me with their nonsense, or are they, showing me to look at it? It's like I can't tell at times.
Yeah. There is, this event does not have portions where it is more or less pithy or portions where it is more or less relevant. It is intrinsically off the scale in terms of meaningfulness, intelligence, purpose, et cetera, et cetera. And of course we can, stumble onto noticing that every once in a while in our thickness and our stupidity.
I think all this stuff actually is really well hidden. Because otherwise I want to go like, holy shit, every time it gets broken through. The normalcy gets broken through. I mean, it's always surprising. I'm just like, you start talking about, oh, it's like getting slapped in the face or something,
But the fact that it seems hidden, and then on also the fact that you can see through it, is equally strange. I mean, the fact that it seems hidden is it itself is a revelation of its nature. It's not like it's hidden, and then when you see it, it becomes more itself. The hidden it, the stupid it, the thick it is it too. That's one of its major modes. Like we were talking about yesterday, it endlessly generates all these seemings. And the seemings are quite convincing. And yet it can develop sufficient sensitivity within itself to begin to notice that these seemings are not really based on anything and exist in a context which completely transcends any and all of them.
Yeah.
Which is when the noticing starts to happen, when the oh wow starts to happen. Right? But the fact of these endless seemings is it itself, is its mode. I mean, the fact that it seems so normal, that it seems so pedestrian, that it seems so whatever, right? The normal human situation and so on. The fact that it can do that is blatant, naked revelation. So even the hiding is revelation, because it's revealing its nature of doing that, of playing hide and seek with itself, of spinning off all of these versions and layers of the onion and so on and so forth. Virtual. So everything is direct access. Everything is direct revelation. Even the confusion is direct. Confusion is its very major mode. It is total incoherence. And we struggle with that. Oh, I'm so confused. God, nothing makes any sense. Like, no, nothing makes any sense. It's a nail on the head. Confusion's only confusing when you think it's supposed to not be confusing. When you think anything's supposed to make sense.
So Peter, when I heard the last time, which was probably about 6 weeks ago, you spoke about everything being experienced, and something, I heard something there. And since then I've experienced some shift inside, which has never, and I'm not sure these two are related, listening to you on this shift, but the shift is about not experiencing some stuff that I was experiencing, like coming very close, like somebody pushing my buttons very strongly. Somehow, or me thinking that things are not fair, or pity for myself or something. It all kind of evened and went to the level where it's almost equal with other experiences. So nothing really has changed in my circumstances.
Right.
If anything, there's some bad stuff, things happening. But somehow, and I don't know if it's a permanent shift or not, and I have been coming close to getting, triggered by those buttons.
Sure.
But I never went back, really, in the last month. And this is amazing to me.
Sure.
Exactly the same, I do exactly the same stuff, but I experience it as one of many things, and almost don't choose to react as strongly as I was, because why?
Well, events.
I'm amazed at that.
Yeah. Events seem to have importance in themselves because we are, in our minds, in our interpretation, generally unconsciously, supplying them with importance, supplying them with, no, this is objective, this matters, this has consequence, this is chains of events that are going on, they matter, and because we have a sense that they matter and they're important, then we have an investment in them that brings a corresponding vulnerability and emotional reactivity and so on. Because if something matters, then you're engaged with it. It matters. But when you begin to see, and it's not that nothing matters, but when you begin to see that the actual situation of experience is experience itself, and that we supply the objectivity within experience. Experience isn't telling us it's objective, just like in a dream. In a dream, you may, typically we're dreaming, if we're just dreaming normally, we're holding the dream to be a real event. Maybe we're talking to somebody, or we're doing something that we may feel like we have to do, whatever, in the dream. But again, if you've ever had lucid dream, you know that it's possible to be with a dream and see, oh, this is not an objective event, this is just an experience. And all of a sudden the importance level, the seeming importance level of the events that seem to be happening, drops way down or disappears altogether, right?
Yeah.
Because you see that, oh, there's nothing really at stake here. There is nothing that really matters here. These events are just, patterns of apparent phenomena that have no implication. And likewise, what's going on here is very similar, and particularly in the sense that the seeming importance of things that makes us emotionally reactive, we supply with our psychology. It's not actually in the events themselves. And so when you begin to shift from experiencing events just credulously as if it was just objectively and true and everything is at face value and so on and so forth, then things seem to be some way. But when you begin to get that, so what's going on here is more subtle than that. There's something interesting going on here. This experience itself, and there's energies and so on and so forth. It provokes a shift in the importance or the way we relate to the experiences and events in our lives, and it certainly shows up in terms of, your reactivity, your emotional vulnerability, and all these kinds of things, because you don't care so much, because you realize that there's not really that much at stake compared to if you're just taking everything for granted as being objectively true and no questions asked. Then things may seem to be very important. Like, for example, in politics, it's very easy to get worked up about politics. If you thought the world was actual, people would be out there carrying guns, and many are, of course. Not so much in this country, I guess, at least not openly. But then, it's also possible to see, this is a crazy system playing itself out, and there's not that much at stake here. And all of a sudden, the urgency or importance it seems to have deflates. And so likewise, the way that we relate to our experience can change largely depending on subjective factors, because we supply the urgency or the importance that circumstances seem to have, and that's variable because it depends upon how we're relating to our experience.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is, for me, the shift happened in the way that I don't have this instant reaction. Previously I had this instant reaction. If somebody sits me down and tells me that it's all not very important, I would probably agree. So on a mental level, I would, but it never applied to me. And I had cases where it didn't come to 10 and acted out of that. And somehow that has changed. There is this instant reaction, but it's so much slower, so much smaller.
Because we hold these things unconsciously. We don't hold them in our conscious mind. It's not something we think, or a philosophy we're holding, or an idea we have that we can argue with or question and so on. These things, we hold them unconsciously, so we don't even know. We take them to be true unquestionably. And they're not amenable to logic. Even if you really come to a different understanding sort of philosophically or in your thoughts, it doesn't necessarily affect the way you're holding it, because it's like, the way I put it, it's the way you're holding yourself in your energy. And psychologically speaking, you could say you're holding it subconsciously or unconsciously. And the trick is to address, that's what all the spiritual work is about. This is not about conscious ideas. This is about discovering how to shift your own energy in terms of where you are with it. And the process of doing that is subtle and strange, and it's not logical. So it looks like we're sitting around here talking about ideas and stuff, but in actuality there's other things going on, and being directly immersed in that way of being with experience can be provocative can have an effect, and ultimately we can stumble on to how to, let's just call it how to reorient ourselves with in relation to our energy in a more integrated fashion, in a more empowered fashion.
I still don't know how it happens though.
No, it makes no sense. It's irrational. There's no way. It can't be analyzed.
I would say that it's the less reactivity is the diminishing the experience of diminishing self-importance,
Sure.
or that there's anything that can be damaged or confronted, or and so it's almost as there's a diminishment of notion of individual self as
Sure.
being more important than whatever else
Sure.
is appearing in experience itself.
Yeah.
So
Yes, I mean, it's all that. It's just having a worldview where you're important, the world's important, circumstances are important, it matters, you have to do stuff about stuff, as opposed to a worldview where this is natural. I'm a part of this.
right.
What's doing me is doing this. It's all unfolding. It's all essentially out of control. Anyway, it's doing itself.
Right. Well, that's what I was
and all of those, I agree with you. All of those kinds of notions affect this kind of a shift where there is less self-importance, less holding of, less self-centeredness, less holding oneself as separate from the world. There's me and there's the world, and I'm in the world and I have to do something about it. And there's more of everything becomes much more permeable and integrated. A tendency in that direction anyway, which definitely changes the way our experience feels and the way we function in a lot of obvious ways. Certainly reactivity is one of them.
But more importantly, I think what I was trying to say here is that we begin to see, just like in a dream, when we see ourselves in a dream, that we're not supplying emotion to a reaction. We are not. There's no we to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
We begin to see that it's this we've been taking ourselves to be,
Right.
or that has been being experienced as something we're taking ourselves to be.
Right, sure.
Is itself a phantom. It's a dream, like
sure.
everything else.
Yeah.
baby.
Oh, I love it. Decaf today? Extra Jagger?
Yeah.
Extra.
What's this is like baby steps in that regard, where I'm dreading something's going to happen at work, that I got to face some kind of crappy student,
Right.
and then I start paying attention. I dread, but I start paying attention when I get to work, how different it is than I think it's going to go, and all of a sudden I just start noticing there's birds out in the yard, and it's really astoundingly different than how I thought it was going to go.
Yeah.
Almost always.
Mm.
And that's a really good technique for noticing, is noticing that the absolute uniqueness and surprising quality of the circumstances of every instant. What seems to happen at any instant is completely unpredictable and entirely unexpected, not just in little ways, but in huge ways. Always, not like sometimes and once in a while, but like always. That's as intrinsic in the circumstances, the apparent circumstances of the present moment, that they are entirely spontaneous, entirely unpredictable, entirely surprising, and entirely meaningful. They will convey just vast quantities of unexpected information and revelation and input from all over the place. Thanks. And that's just a fact of the nature of experience. And since that is always the case, noticing that immediately takes you out of this narrative expectation of continuity of events and what's going to happen and what did happen and what I think and what they think and blah blah blah, and deposits you in spontaneity where all bets are off, and instant noticing. All of a sudden you are less in the habitual framework of interpretation and more in actuality, which of course is this moment always is. This moment is always actuality.
It's almost an advantage to have, like, I have a route that I have to take to work. It's almost an advantage to have that kind of repetition, so that I can start going, okay, well, the sun's never glinted off the car like that before. I don't think that car's ever been beside me before. I mean, it's like
it's always
things like
completely,
that.
it's always completely unique. I mean, you know, I've said this, you probably heard me, I've said this dozens and dozens and let's say hundreds of times, but, you know, it's a very, very simple yogic experiment to discover what experience is. Sit in front of a blank wall that's well lit, don't move, don't change anything, try and make everything as motionless and stable as possible, and sit with your eyes open and stare at the wall. Mm-hmm. Lo and behold, you will notice you do not have the same experience ever. Everything changes every instant. You know, and this just demonstrates very explicitly that the spontaneity of experience does not depend upon so-called circumstances. And circumstances themselves, as experience, are always wildly spontaneous. A blank wall will show you that, how much more a changing environment with all sorts of things showing up, you know, moving past and so on and so forth.
What is a shift like that, though? If everything is experience and everything comes at you, and one day you start experiencing things differently and don't get as upset and angry and just take things in, what is a shift?
It can't be said. It can't be said what it is.
It's something that feels real, and yet I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's real. It's absolutely
Like
real.
any experience.
I mean, and a sure sign of reality is that you can't talk about it. When you can talk about it, then it indicates that you are dealing with something that is describable, conceivable, that makes some kind of sense or has some degree of logic to it.
I have no desire to explain it either.
Yeah, sure. But that's just as well, because it's unexplainable. But the important thing is not to describe it. The important thing is to notice it, and the more you notice it, the more it is integrated into your life, and the more you get to take advantage of its characteristics, which proves to be extremely valuable to us in terms of sense of freedom, a sense of fullness, a sense of independence, a sense of empowerment, a sense of relative invulnerability, having no just invulnerability is a good one. And we discover these things, they don't make any sense. But nonetheless, by just noticing this whole irrational but actual quality of experience, all of this begins to unfold itself more and more actively, more and more dynamically. You know, and again, you never will be able to get a handle on it or say what it is, but it is self-evident, self-verifying that this is something. And you know, as always, the foot in the door is so easy. Just notice anything whatsoever in your experience that you don't have a handle on. That's all. Anywhere, anytime, just anything. Some tiny little thing, you know, the glint of light off something that's reflecting, or some sound that suddenly, you know, the chirping of a bird suddenly, or something. Just anything, and you know, then the race is on.
And then you realize you don't have a handle on anything.
Yeah, of course, because that opens your awareness to the revelation of what this actually is, to whatever degree you can access it, you can access it depending upon your current sort of frames of reference and stuff. But it doesn't matter how much you do it. Just a little bit is fine, because it's like popping a balloon. You don't need to make a very big hole. You know? Like a little needle point will do the trick.
So what is it when What do you think of choice then?
Well, choice is inconceivable. You can't say what it is, you can't say how it works, you can't say if it works, you can't say if it's anything. You know, it's like anything, really. You know, it's mysterious.
Seems like we have a choice of having this reactivity or not. And like reacting to things and getting all upset and worked up is a choice that we are free not to take.
Well, it may or may not be a choice.
I don't know.
The most the most powerful shifts happen intrinsically rather than by design or by intention. In other words, we may be able to influence our behavior by, trying to, by planning to, by exercising various things, by saying certain things to ourselves, by doing certain things, whatever. But the most powerful transformations in how we relate to our experience come sort of from as groundswells from underneath, rather than as intention from by
yeah,
design.
when you get to the space though, something happens.
Yeah.
And to you, before you had no choice, and now it looks like you have a choice to jump on it or not. And
Yeah.
you can choose to let it pass by, but before you get to this space inside, there is no choice.
Right, but getting to that space is the thing that I'm talking about, and and when that happens, that maybe can happen even more profoundly. It's not necessarily the end of the line. It may be that there's more, a journey of moving into different spaces, each of which has different properties and different degrees of disentanglement from our ordinary stuck view of our lives and being in our lives problematically the way we may.
Saying that we have choice about something is just a way of saying that we have conscious access to our supposed personal influence in that circumstance, which is in itself is neither here nor there.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, yeah, choice can also be a type of a shift in responsiveness, noticing that the responsiveness is new in each moment. It's like the spontaneous responsiveness of things, which may feel different from the activity too.
What choice is, what anything is ultimately inconceivable and unknowable and transcendental. But all of these things can seem to be very different things as we navigate through the different potential spaces that we move through in the process of unfoldment.
Like I had an experience yesterday where I took someone in a pretty desperate situation to a rehab, and it was a process of hours of unfolding. But then there was this point where I knew we weren't going to get in the car unless I chose that it was okay whatever she did in the car. I was like, just take it in the car, let's go. And I felt like at that moment I made a choice, and there could be consequences and ramifications, but it was like I said something that was like, it seemed like a choice.
Yeah, it seems like a choice, but then why did you make that choice? Why didn't you make another choice? Where did that come from?
Right. And to my mind, I thought it was because it was the only way to get there.
Right.
I told myself, we won't get there unless
but why did you tell yourself that? Where did that come from?
Observation of the prior 4 hours.
Right. But why did you draw the conclusions that you drew based on that observation? Maybe someone else would have drawn some other conclusions. Yeah. In other words, there's always an irrational, transcendental factor in all event. ultimately nothing but always discoverably, even when things can seem to be sort of, well, it makes sense. We got to do this, so let's do it, kind of thing. But really, where things come from is ultimately mysterious, and noticing that is profoundly valuable. So again, the whole thing with choice is fine. By all means, make choices. Why not? It's great fun. But you have the opportunity to notice when you're making a choice that something else is going on too, and you're calling it a choice. Or you might say, I had no choice. Okay, fine, call it you had no choice. But in either case, where did that come from? Where is it happening? What context is it happening in? What's it made of? How's it appearing? How's it disappearing? How's it going?
Well, we can make the choices that we can make in the moment. And we can't really make any other choices, because in my business right now, things are going at a level like I've wanted to have them go for years. And if I had a choice, I had to go this way many years ago. But I just wasn't there. It just wasn't there to happen. It wasn't.
Exactly.
It was an impossible thing to have happen until now that it's happening.
Right. So where does that there-ness come from?
Yeah, where does that come from at all?
Yeah.
And it comes from the thing that I'm not in control of, that's for sure. It's happening.
Well, but are you, to say I'm not in control of it is another meaningless statement. Whatever control you have is its control, and whatever out of control you have is its control. Or maybe it's out of control, who knows? But the point is that
it comes when it comes.
Yeah, well, yeah, and nothing but. It's not like it's never not coming, but it comes as it comes. And there's no way to get a handle on what that is. You can't say what it's doing. You can't even say what it's done. You can sort of say, well, gosh, that really got me in a place that's, this is kind of a nice place to be. It's like, well, yeah, it says you. But you can't say what is actually happening in any situation, because you can't say where it come from, you can't say how it got there, you can't say what it consists of, you can't say where it's going. In actuality, you can, by oversimplifying and just making up an interpretation, but that interpretation will be a partialization. Because it will omit so much that is unsayable, that is unconceivable, and yet which is self-evidently always a part of, event.
So the seeming flow is just a seeming flow.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Everything is just a seeming.
And you are it. Okay?
And what it actually is, and even what it seems to be, is completely inconceivable.
It's really what?
Inconceivable. You can't get a handle on it. You can't get a handle on anything. The capital A. So you can't know what's happening, you can't know what happened, you can't know what's going to happen, you can't know if anything's happening, you can't know why it's happening, you can't know where it's happening, you can't know how it's happening, you can't know what it's made of, you can't know how it's being experienced, you can't know any of that stuff in actuality. And so anytime you find yourself saying or asserting filling in any of those blanks, you're doing so just by bravado. Which is fine, but just notice the fact. Notice the fact of the actual openness of the circumstance, and how everything always transcends how you're holding it to be, no matter how sophisticatedly and elaborately you're holding it to be. The event always transcends that, inconceivably. I mean, to an inconceivable degree.
That's the outwardness, feelingness that I was kind of talking about before. I was experiencing it.
Sure.
There's so much beyond.
Sure.
what I have normally come to know as
Yeah.
being alive.
Sure. Yeah. And noticing that fact is noticing, and noticing gives you access to that, and it ramps itself up and starts taking off on exponentially with no end in sight.
So two things, one, just for a second, going back to the choice thing. One of the things that I feel is that, or everything is so hard to articulate around you, but that
You notice.
like the word comes out and
that's not the word.
That's
okay. And it doesn't matter what you say, it's all
It's not what
twisted.
I said. It's what it does.
That's right.
That's because I'm aware as it's coming out. That should possibly be it.
Give it up.
Park it.
Don't take anything.
Don't even bother.
That at the point when I realized or observed that the people around me didn't have choice to act the way they were acting to do, it became obvious to me that like nobody woke up in the morning and said, "Oh, I'm going to be mean to people today."
Yeah.
You know, and
Well put.
and so, you know, and yet they were there, and so I just didn't have it. There was no choice. They didn't have that, and then I start to go, so no, I didn't do I, but I still have these outbursts, or I still do these things, and so, you know, I did a couple this morning, and I was like, ugh, I'm not proud of that, you know, and yet here I am with it, and it always has this feeling of consequences. So that's one line of questioning, but I have one other, which.
And it's doing itself.
So there's no consequences then, even.
Well, there may or may not be consequence, but it's inconceivable. So even if there were, you couldn't possibly get a handle on them, because you can't know what's actually happening. So you obviously can't know where it's going to lead to, because any interpretation you have about what happens or is happening or happens in an event is a vast oversimplification. Because all event, i.e. this event, is inconceivable in its scope, in its factors, and there's no way to get a handle on it or interpret it accurately.
So then but I can guess, which is much like I can have a choice. It's like you can play.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we do.
Guess.
We do. Our minds do oversimplify, but the oversimplification is drastic. Like drastic. Like I wonder what Washington D.C. is like, and so you land on a street corner and you see an ant and you look at the ant and you go, oh, now I know what Washington D.C. is like. Yeah, Washington D.C. is like the ant, but you're oversimplifying a bit. That's kind of what we do with our experience. I mean, even when we have all these vast, elaborate worldviews and explanations and very sophisticated ideas of what's going on here, it's just like that ant. Because what's really going on here is like, phew, you know, just off the charts and off the off, and et cetera, et cetera.
But then there's the view thing, right?
Yeah, that is the view.
No, but you're talking about, you know, a couple meetings ago, you were talking about the yogic view or the right.
The view.
The view.
The view.
The view. Yes.
The Dzogchen view.
And so, what was it? Yeah, I mean, so isn't there, you know, like more or less productive or accurate or simplifications?
No.
Well, what about the view?
The view is not a simplification.
No, it's not
It's not simple.
This is the view.
It's
Yeah.
not simple, and it's not any of those.
The view is infinite
Or
openness.
even conceivable.
And infinite openness is not limited because it builds on itself forever exponentially.
Yeah, but you were saying something else before.
Oh, he lies.
Sorry.
That's the big picture.
Well, there's a lot of ways to put infinite openness. In fact, anything. In fact, No, no. In fact, anything you say is a way of putting infinite openness.
Right, everything's
Anything you
true.
say. I mean, this glass of water is a way of saying
They're all
infinite openness, because that's what this is. A glass of water is a name for infinite openness. The view is infinite openness. How many ways can it be put? As many ways as you want. But the question is to see the actuality, not to dwell on labels and tags and definitions. This is actual right here. And this is what matters. This is the view. And ways of putting it exist within it and consist of it and indicate it. Right? In other words, anything you talk about will indicate something in experience, and something in experience is experience, and so embodies all the characteristics of experience, i.e., in this case, infinite openness. So you start talking about a glass of water, that's the view. But you have to see it as it is. And you don't see it as it is through ideas. You see it as it is right here.
Even though the stuff that you're kind of bringing up right now is giving me ideas about it, but the ideas about it aren't what the isness of it is.
Well, they are, because the ideas are it. The ideas are its isness, but they aren't
A full picture of the isness.
they are the isness. The isness is, because the isness is infinite openness, it is not even a full picture of itself. Someone got that.
So the middle will be.
Yeah.
So, in other words, any version of it is it, and is a partial version of it,
As well as
which
the
is very
whole.
paradoxical. But that's the way this works. That's what you get when you got to start with infinite openness.
So it's also a complete view of it.
Yeah, complete.
That's
Oh
what I
yeah.
was just gonna say.
It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
The part is the whole. The whole is the
John.
part. The whole transcends each and all of its parts.
More than one heckler.
Okay, but
And
the
if that doesn't make any sense, take it up with management.
But the oversimplification. The oversimplification. Then it's not the boogeyman.
No, that's it. Oversimplification is it. Is one of its major modes.
It's just yeah.
But from a yogic point of view, you want to see it.
You want to see that.
Everything is fine. Everything is reality, but see what it is.
Right.
And that's where noticing fits in.
Just an appearance.
It's not about, because noticing reveals context.
Right.
And context shows you what things are.
That's good.
Huh.
Context.
Context.
Explain
That makes sense.
That's a slippery path.
Well, of course it's slippery. It's all slippery.
So when you go say, okay, you can't know anything, anytime, any place, anything that's happened other than, and so it's can't know. What about? And you may have answered this 100 times, but I'm pretty new to this frame. But what about sort of that deep knowing? That knowing. Because when you say that, I found myself when you go, you can't know anything, any place, anything.
What you can't know,
Oh, yes.
it's a problem of words that are most useful here.
Yeah.
Okay, I would say you can't know, but you can participate. And that deep knowing, I would call, let's not call it a knowing, let's call that a participation. Let's call it an energetic participation, say, if you get New Agey. So, you can't sit and figure out something. You can't sit down with a pencil and paper and write something that is going to be true. And yet, you can participate with events more profoundly than that, directly, in a way that can feel participatory, can feel like following choices, can feel like embarking on adventures, and so on and so forth. And they're ultimately the same thing, it's just a matter of degree of profundity.
Yeah, I mean that's what my experience is that it's sort of I'm connected to just something like when you talk, or there's certain concepts you say where I'm like, I recognize that.
Yeah.
It's like I resonate
Yeah,
with that because
exactly.
I know it, because I know
Right.
it, and we're
Yeah.
the same, and
Because,
so,
because at that point you transcend the words and you go to direct experience as a recognition, which puts you in participation. because you're participating with the energetic. It's called the energetic reality, rather than being with it conceptually or rationally. And it can all be one system. It's not like there's a necessary disjunct between words and more deep participation, but it's a slippery slope.
Because it's all once, even this whole, that same knowing.
Yeah, sure, of course. Why don't we have a little 5 or 10 minute break?
Yeah.
Good idea.
It's dessert time again.
I'll come
I think that's
go
a
back
good
online and
Chai time.